it was your birthday, we should have brought you cupcakes.
Yeah, but I always, I always
true,
make
Cora.
my own cupcakes. It's
All
true,
right.
Cora. You can
We're
make them
live
next
now.
year.
What you will enjoy is when we are in person. Matt is good for something, so he does bring like cupcakes and stuff,
Oh,
food.
nice.
So he does do things like that.
We used to get lunch, Holly.
Oh, yeah, in the old
No.
days.
All right, so let's get started. These are the deliberations for the December 17th, 2020 City of Rochester Zoning Board hearing. During deliberations, there is no participation from applicants or from the public. Board members deliberate cases and make decisions. So we will go in order with the agenda. So case number 1 is 72 Thurston Road.
Okay. Any thoughts on this first one, guys?
I'm always happy to see property go back into use.
Yeah.
I don't have much to say about the double hung windows or something like that. I leave that to others to speak about that. But I don't have any problem with the parking and the issues. I was going to ask whether or not those garage doors were operational, but during testimony, they were used for storage anyway. And I don't see too much of a parking issue out there.
Anybody else? Any comments? General comments?
I was kind of with the comments of just warming it up a bit. I think the examples that they showed, a lot of those buildings in the 19th ward that go from commercial to residential all have that same look. I don't know that that helped the case at all because I don't really care for any of them that look like that.
Trying over here. We trying.
A little awning, a little walkway, a little something, but maybe just as like a comment to those guys, but otherwise I don't have a problem with it.
I don't either. I think the residential doors, regardless of what the windows look like, having residential doors, I think, make it much better in terms of what it would look like on the street.
Would you agree that all 3 of those doors should be the same depth at the front of the building?
That doesn't bother me very much. I think because the middle one sometimes looks different in places anyway. So I think as long as the doors are similar looking, the depth for me doesn't make a huge difference.
Joe?
Well, I'm going to echo that, but play a little bit more architect here. I'd like to see the double hung windows be the same size and proportions to the ones on the second floor, the ones that are individuals, not the triples. I'd like Tyrese's idea of sidewalks from the doors out to the main sidewalks and landscaped area in between that all along the front. And I'd like to see them get more in line with 629, 631 Thurston, which was a photo Matt showed that had sort of like little roofs over the entryway, something to that end. So my approval would be, I have no problem with the reuse and the repurposing of the building. It's just the architectural look of that facade, I think, needs to get more in line with 629, 631 Thurston, which is what the examples the 19th Ward Association showed. So mine would be a condition of those items there.
Yeah, but does he have the money to make all those changes? And that's not why we're here for this case.
So one of the things you can impose conditions in answer to the question. It's up to the board to determine what's appropriate for those conditions, how far to take something, what's too far. That's for you guys to decide. So you can certainly talk about that. But yes, you have the ability to impose conditions around the aesthetic of the change of use from non-residential to residential.
Joe, because you would know more than me about this, if they changed those windows, wouldn't they be too close to the ground?
That was my initial thought as well, why at first, but this building is set back a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And there's been other projects, the big project that we approved for, oh gosh, Matt, it was off of Hudson Avenue, and there were units right on the ground floor where they had windows similar to this. It was the Passero project, I believe, and I can't remember where it was, but
yeah, the CDS housing project. And I'm actually thinking, yeah, that is a project. I'm sorry. Yeah, I lost my train of thought there for a
We
second.
did this with some previous projects and before that.
You imposed a condition that the windows had to be
Yeah.
replaced. And actually, to the point
So-
about them being too close, I think there's two aspects of that conversation. There's building code, which you can, meet, but there's the security aspect. And I believe the 19th Ward's letter addressed the security aspect by saying if people need to do security, you can do stuff on the interior of the windows, so it
Correct.
doesn't detract from the outside.
I think John DeMont's
Right.
letter hit it right on the head on what
Yeah.
you want to see. I
Mhm.
think this building is really a gateway into the 19th Ward.
It is.
I think it has an opportunity to do something for the owner to really do something beneficial for the community, because those the housing next door, which is subsidized, which is that was built quite some time ago, but it's in still pretty good shape.
Yeah, they look nice.
So I think it really ties into nice. So I would support that motion with those conditions, Joe, and accept the God, what is the word?
I've got double hung. So there were three things that were mentioned. There were awnings, there were individual sidewalks leading to each of the new front doors, and then there were putting double hung windows in where the current sliders are to mirror the size of the second floor on the front elevation.
Yeah, and just restoring all that yeah. So in adding that walkway, do we want to put specifically restoring the rest of that to green area?
Right. So if you want to say you have to get, and I know exactly what you guys are talking about, you have to do individual walkways up and you have to reconfigure. So where the hardscape is, whether it's asphalt or concrete, would have to be removed and restored to grass area.
Yeah, great.
I think it looks like a motel.
Let me ask this question.
Matt, yeah, I'm okay with some sort of cover over each of the entryways, because whatever he wants to do, it could be an awning or a physical little porch, shed roof or something. Because, Matt, one question, I don't want to get off on a tangent, but why didn't transparency come into a play for a variance if they were not going to change those windows out, similar to case 7?
So you mean case 5?
I wrote it
For Federal
down.
Street?
Oh, yeah, case 5. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Case
no,
5, yeah.
it's a great question. So the code differentiates between renovations to existing buildings and then building from scratch. And I think the reason for that is there's some, accommodation of, there's challenges when you're trying to repurpose a building.
I just, for my own benefit, wanted to know why transparency didn't come into play on case 1. So, okay. So I'd like to make a motion to grant with the conditions that Matt listed, which is the sidewalks to each entry door, double hung windows in same proportion to the second floor in the landscape area, green space in the front, and some sort of a covering over each door, whether it be an awning or an actual structure, something similar to 629, 631 Thurston.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
We're gonna do roll call, or you're gonna do
Do you want me to do roll call, or do you guys want to go through with you can go through with your name. You're numbered in alphabetical order. I can roll call. Matt? Grant, I'm sorry, I missed what you said. Number 2 is Jim.
Grant.
Tyrese.
Grant.
Lorene.
Grant.
Cora.
Grant.
Joe.
Grant.
And Holly.
Grant.
Okay, so the motion approval on condition passes 7-0. There is no case 2. Case number 3 is 476 Beach Avenue. This is the side yard pool installation.
Any comments on this one? I think this one was pretty straightforward. Any additional comments, questions?
It's perfect, to me, it's perfect use of a hidden space.
Yeah, I agree, sir.
I would agree with you, Jim. It's going to be so inconspicuous that.
Yeah.
I mean, I had a tough time seeing back into that area when I drove up, and
I did too.
I mean, especially there's no slide or
Right.
anything. It's just, it'll look great.
Yeah.
I wonder if Matt's gonna get mad when he finds out that every one of us drove onto that property where we're not supposed to.
Sometimes you wanna feel,
sometimes you want to feel, yeah, sometimes you want to feel like you lived the dream, huh, Jim? Like, I was coming home to this.
You accept all the standards as she wrote them up in
Can we
the
ever do standards again?
application?
Yeah,
Yes.
I'm okay with. I'll make a motion to grant and approve the standards as the applicant has laid out in the application.
Okay. So there's a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, so we'll do a roll call here. Matt? Jim?
Grant.
Tyrese?
Grant.
Lorene?
No.
5 is Cora.
Grant.
Joe?
Grant.
And Holly.
Grant.
Motion passes 6-1. Okay, next case is 97 Railroad Street. This is the sign for Rohrbach Brewing. Questions,
Comments
thoughts?
on the sign?
Say that again, Tyrese. I'm sorry, Mr.
I was just saying, any other questions on the sign? Anybody have any?
I like the sign. I think we should just, I'm for it. I love that street. I think they've done great stuff there.
Yeah, they really have. I've seen those people out in the cold. I was like, on Sundays,
They had those igloos at Bitter Honey.
yeah, these guys. So at Real Rock they had fire pits, and I was like, oh, it's two cool guys.
Therese, Therese, that's what you call having a cold one.
Yeah. And there were like 4 or 5 parties out there when I drove on Sunday. There were
Great.
Yeah, well, yeah, it is great. Yeah, they're doing what they can.
Just great.
So I'll make a motion to grant and accept the standards in the application.
I'll second it.
Matt? Jim?
Grant.
Grant. Sorry, Tyrese?
Grant.
Lorraine?
Grant.
Cora?
Grant.
Joe?
I'm gonna grant.
And Holly?
Grant.
Motion passes. All right, so let's talk, next case is Federal Street. So this is the demolition and reconstruction. I was happy with, or I was happy to hear, the applicant went through and did detail the variances, which I think was good. I think that was helpful.
I think it's a good project. I don't have a problem with it. I mean, the existing buildings, I mean, that area in that street to start on some sort of a project, I think will really benefit the neighborhood.
Can't get any closer to the bus line, that's for sure. Right next door to the RTS Center.
I appreciate how much attention they took to make sure it was accessible.
And green. I like all the green space. It's such a
I just
great
think the
street.
Rochester Housing Authority did a really good, thorough job.
Yeah.
I agree.
I think they did a good job to mitigate those variances. I agree with that testimony as far as the setback, given the scale of the project, because it's 3.5 stories versus 2.5, which is allowed, but it needs to be, I mean, I couldn't find really any flaws in it. It's just a great improvement to the neighborhood. And then I think Beechwood endorsed it, right, Matt?
Yeah, they did extensive outreaches. They talked about as far as I think they said what was acceptable to the neighborhood. And they detailed, so, one of the standards being the alternatives, one of the things we always want to cover, what else was covered, and the applicant discussed their original proposal and how they scaled back to better meet what they heard from public feedback.
Yeah, they're very thorough.
I was a little upset to hear that those buildings are only roughly 50 years old, but when the testimony was given as to what was in those buildings, what was left, and what amenities they do not have compared to what the people will have, it turned my mind in favor of it.
I'll make a motion to grant as submitted.
I'll second.
We will poll Matt. Jim.
Grant.
Therese.
Grant.
Lorene.
Grant.
Cora.
Grant.
Joe.
Grant.
And Holly.
Grant.
Motion passes 7-0. And the last case to deliberate this evening is 50 Edgerton, case number 7.
Such a Spencer and Greg are just great. They're just great.
Love them.
I
Over
can't
project.
wait till the pandemic is over to go have a beer with them. I'm gonna go get some Roblox and bring them back. But I don't know what the neighborhood was thinking.
Bring your dog. Bring your dog.
Yes, I will bring Devin. I don't know what they were thinking. This is just so out of character.
Oh, I think they went, you know what, Tyrese, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I'm wondering if they just went because they really like the couple. You know what I mean? I think,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying? I think that they're probably very likable
They
neighbors.
think like it, don't they?
Yeah.
I can't say no, but I mean, we denied that patio in the South Wedge last year, and it was. I remember it was like the side porch that they have,
Mhm.
and I think it was an enclosed porch. And they declosed, and they took the enclosure off of it, and we declined that small thing. And this is just. I drove.
I would have rather.
Joe.
I would have rather have even just seen a slab on grade patio.
Well, that's
out front,
what
not
I
even
was
a little raised
thinking.
deck.
That's exactly. Throw some stones. Get a bistro table.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Call it a day.
Because
Sure, that's a good-
it would have reminded me of the little gardens you see like in DC where people just like you say have a little table and chairs, and it's pavers. The deck with the rail I'd almost rather see him take the railings off it.
Oh, those
Grade
railings
up
are
to it or
ugly.
something. I don't know. I agree with Tyree. I thought there would have been 19 letters of opposition versus 19 letters of approval.
Exactly.
And I'm not saying that.
Very
What
nice.
Ray said, I think is right.
Let's run through the standards on this one to sort of hone in on what it is exactly that's being discussed. So the first one, the benefit to the applicant outweighs any detriment to the health, safety, and welfare of the neighborhood or the community. So I think the applicant did a really good job of outlining their benefits, of course, with regard to meeting neighbors. So let's talk a little bit about potential detriments.
Well, that's kind of interesting. And when Joe brought up that question about how old that house was, and we found out that it's much older than the other houses on that street. The house is out of character with the things to the left and to the right. But that's one of the beauties of some neighborhoods in Rochester. The way I looked at it is that, while it's not the greatest thing in the world what they're proposing, the applicants did talk about other options that they looked into, such as building a porch themselves. But it wouldn't fit with the front door sideways on the house. So it comes back to this. If you're walking up and down that street, you see that property and it's done with that little fence thing up in the front. So yeah, that's kind of nice. That's kind of cute. Frankly, if there was nothing done at all, I don't think it would look that good. I'm not talking about the looks of the house. I'm just saying that house looks like it doesn't fit in with the stone bottom and no porches and things like that, whereas every other house has a porch. I actually think that what they're proposing brings it closer than the way it fits in right now.
You know, I agree with Cora and Joe. I think a slab of concrete and a bistro, I think you could, and some greenery and things around it, I think they could make it very nice out there. I mean, to me, I wouldn't want to impinge on those windows. The windows are all very, very nice. So I don't know.
Well, this kind of segues into the character. Let's talk about the character of the area. So as Joe brought up during the hearing and we're talking about now, the house predates the rest of the street by like 30 years or more.
Yeah, is the rest of the street out of character, or is this place out of character?
So that becomes the question. And then what the role is to determine sort of have the standards been met, which is of course what we're discussing. So do you have an answer to your question, Joe?
Yeah, I mean,
it was rhetorical.
Yeah, well, that's right. Exactly. This is the first. This is another first.
So we're counting on you to figure this out, you know.
I would have thought that house was
Mr.
built
Architect.
as an infill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Step up to the plate.
Well, I do have a suggestion. I was flat out no when I saw it this morning. Now I've heard the testimony and the fact that this house was actually there before the rest of them. I would just maybe, and with Cora's idea with it was great. I don't want to see him to tear out the deck portion of it, but maybe, I don't know why they need the railings and maybe some landscaping around it to screen it. And they can still have that separation between people walking by, but still be able to talk to them, yet it wouldn't feel like there's a deck there. It's just like a sitting area. That's the way I would mitigate that. But,
So you'd be able to leave the platform and then.
Yeah, leave the platform, but get rid of the railings. The railings is really what makes it feel like a deck. And then if we could, like Lorraine suggested, landscape around the perimeter of the deck itself would not make it look like a deck out there. It would just be a sitting area that you kind of just see them. And then I think it addresses Cora's concern. I think it addresses Lorraine's concern. And then it's, like I said, it was there before everybody else was there. So that's just my idea. As a designer, that's what I would probably like. I almost wish that went the whole width to the front of the house, but that's over with now. So anyway, that's where I'm at.
Yeah, my thoughts are a bit different. I can't even support the platform. I think the case they presented was very nice, but even if you go back to benefits, I don't think what they presented in their testimony are true benefits that really outweigh the overall character. Being able to see neighbors with dogs, I mean, that in terms of land use, that's just not a strong enough argument. Just being honest, it's not a strong enough argument. They can sit on their current porch and see dogs and folks, and then they have a substantial back patio in the rear of their yard. I think we're giving way too much here, even with leaving the platform. Yeah. I wouldn't even be able to support the platform.
I mean, yeah,
I just think it's totally,
go through,
I think even without the railings, the entire platform there just does not outweigh what they've presented in their oral testimony or in their written testimony. That really can stand up to what we're trying to, what they're,
Therese, when you say that, I mean, if you really go through the standards, it fails on 3 of them. Yeah. No other remedy. There is another remedy. Character of the neighborhood. It's out of character with the neighborhood, even though they were there first.
Even though they were there first. Yeah.
And it is self-created. Significance. I would have to lean more towards it is significance because it's not a raised porch, it's a deck. It's basically a deck.
Just so weird.
Honestly, I think if they weren't so lovely, we wouldn't even be looking this hard. But you know what I mean?
They presented a very thorough, but I mean, I just think it really to the terms of zoning and land,
I would agree.
Fit the bill. It really does. And I'm just being honest.
Yeah, I would say, because if I was a flat out no when I saw it this morning, because I was like, where did this thing come from?
And then to Jim's point, I think, I think the argument was even weaker in terms of we didn't want to build the front porch because we would have to walk around. Well, you got to walk downstairs, walk across grass to go to a elevated platform. That's mind-boggling. That didn't make any sense when she said.
Yeah, I agree.
Mm-hmm.
To Jim's point, but I'm like, you have to do more work to get to the platform than you would do if you added a porch. And I've seen porches, and I know we all have seen porches where the door has been either on the side yard and it wraps around. I've seen that before in neighborhoods in Rochester and in other places. So
I agree, Tyrese. Oh, I'm sorry. Are you done?
putting the people aside, but looking at, they're lovely.
Well, I agree because I don't think that what they presented in going through all our standards, I don't think it justifies a patio in the front yard, which is against, the zoning variance. So I have to agree with him, Tyrese.
So
I think it's a no.
So I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion to grant.
Is there a solution?
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Is there a solution? This might be more rhetorical for their benefit or even our collective benefit, but is there a more temporary solution that could be put in place that doesn't even require or violate any sort of zoning at all?
Yeah, they could build a front porch, I think. No, they could. No, I'm not talking, but they can build a front porch and they wouldn't be here.
Well, no, I was thinking in terms of something that's not necessarily permanent, because it looks like they were creating something that wasn't necessarily attached to the house, so it didn't detract from the value of the house. It was just something that's more functional. Is there another functional solution that wouldn't violate the zoning requirements?
I don't know, Matt, would there be a requirement for zoning if they had like a sitting area out front?
So patios are required to be in the rear yard.
Right.
There's a definition of a patio, and then there's people putting a couple of chairs in their front yard and, sitting there talking to their neighbors. That really doesn't meet the definition of a patio kind of thing. But to actually construct or install, to actually make a point of putting down pavers or constructing a platform or something, you're a patio, as opposed to putting two chairs in your front yard. You're not a patio. So is there a temporary? I think the temporary would be just create your own seating area sort of in the yard without, actually constructing or installing something. But once you move to something more permanent or something to that level, it ends up becoming one of those items. Or of course they could construct something or design something with a roof and it would be a porch. Good question though. Really good question.
So I'll make a motion to grant.
I'll second.
Okay, and I will poll each member. This motion is to grant. Matt?
Deny.
Okay. Jim?
Grant.
Tyrese?
Deny.
Lorene?
Deny.
Cora?
Deny.
Joe?
Deny.
And Holly?
Deny.
Motion is denied, 1-6. All right, and that is
Matt, do you have enough for the findings?
Yeah, they do. Joe had run through them.
You got enough, okay,
They do have enough, yeah.
all right.
So that will conclude the December 17th zoning board of appeals hearing for